Hello, welcome. It's a little strange to use a mic with kind of a small group, but it's 7 o'clock. I think people may trickle in, but let's go ahead and get started just to be prompt. We are recording and there may be Zoom people who join us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jessica Hipp. I am the co-chair of the Community Advisory Committee. Lillian in the back is the other co-chair. And then Keith is also on the Community Advisory Committee. We have some Vivian, and then we have several other members who are out of town. So the Community Advisory Committee does a lot of different things. And one of the things that we have is a school subcommittee, which was formed a few years ago to just look at options for education here in Temple. So that's part of why we're hosting this. And there really isn't a specific agenda. I do, the thing that's always present is about Temple Elementary, because there have been several different movements by Conval to consolidate, which would involve closing Temple Elementary. And of course, I think a lot of people want to talk about that, and we should talk about that. And I also want to broaden the conversation to be talking about education in general here in Temple. Conval is K-12. We have kids in the full range in the educational system. And part of what Conval has said is there are educational disparities at the middle school level and the high school level. And that's part of why they want to, consolidate the elementary schools, reallocate resources. So I do want to make sure that we're really talking about, are the kids in Temple from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade being educated in a way that feels good to us? And, when the CHC was thinking about putting this on, and I'm going to not talk very much after this, but we really thought, do we invite some people in? Do we invite like some school board people or some of the people in other towns who are doing advocacy? And we decided, let's just start with a conversation with our community. I did invite Liz Swan. She has a family commitment tonight, so she couldn't be here. Liz is our Temple School Board rep to Conval, but she is planning to listen to this. And she encouraged people, if you have thoughts, if you've just never talked to Liz, reach out to her. She really wants to have conversations with people. So if and Facebook is a difficult place to do that. So reach out to her directly. Her email is eswan, E for Elizabeth, eswan@conval.edu. And you can also connect with her through Facebook and find out her contact information. But I think that is all I want to say by way of introduction. So there really, like I said, there's no agenda. So this is just open to express your thoughts, questions, concerns. I may share some of the research that the school subcommittee has done, if it's appropriate, but really it's just an open conversation. So we're a reasonably small group. If you want to raise your hand, I can bring you the mic. You can come up here, whatever feels comfortable.
I'm Amy Cabana. I know this has been a conversation for a long time. I think the question that has not been asked and answered is, why are we losing so many kids in the Conval district towns to other forms of education, whether it be the Lionheart Charter School, homeschool, the Wells School. I imagine there's some folks here who go to the Waldorf schools. I think that that's the broader question that is driving this decision that we need to have answered before we make decisions that are basically going to gut our town. Obviously, I'm not in favor of losing our elementary school. It would make me very sad. I think it would make us all very sad. I think we all know it would affect our property values. I have some other thoughts, but I'll let somebody else go next.
Hi, I'm Rose Lowry. And actually what's kind of interesting is my kids actually didn't go to the Temple Elementary School. We had already started at the Wells School when we moved to Temple, and we just kept them there. But there is no doubt in my mind that an elementary school in a town our size, which is so far away from the other elementary schools we're talking about, if we don't have that school, it will completely change everything about our town. Like, you think about times where we've thought about a development or something coming into town. Those things are minuscule compared to what it will be like if we don't have an elementary school. So what bothered me about, listening to the school board last week when they had their thing at the Peterborough School, is they just didn't talk much about their process of what alternatives did they present. In my mind, I'm a creative person. I'm a problem solver. I'm sure there must be people on the school board that are as well. There's 1,000 other things we could do besides tearing the heart out of these 4 little communities. And it's unique because we're rural. You can compare us to other towns where this has happened, but we're talking about having, kindergartners on a bus for 40 minutes if they don't have parents that can drive them. I'm sorry, 40 minutes an hour. It'll be an hour. When 40 minutes, who am I kidding? And as we know, the result is that people with young families, small children are not going to move to our town, and the ones that are here will move away. Virtually every single person who stood up at the forum last week said, I moved to my town because there was an elementary school. I liked the small elementary school, blah, 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 small elementary school, over and over, every one of them. So, and that's anecdotal evidence, but I think just logic dictates that elementary school is just essentially important. And like, the other thing that was really shocking to me after listening last week was that there's not actually tax savings to be had by this move. I see a lot of nods. I think people are already aware of that. It is a little bit of a buffer against tax increase because, to provide an adequate education to our high school students, we do need more money in the budget. But, I think there are way, way more creative solutions. For one thing, give us our 5th graders back, give us a kindergarten, let us use a school building for preschool. There's a million other things we could do that I feel are much more viable options than tearing up a town.
Hi there, I'm Gail Cromwell. I want to tell you, I agree with Rose. I couldn't hear what Amy said, but I agree with Rose. I probably agree with Amy too, I don't know. I went with our selectmen to a special meeting that the school board invited the selectmen of the 4 towns, Dublin, Francistown, us, and Bennington, to come talk to them. So I went with our group because I knew a lot of the facts at my fingertips, and they were glad to have me there. There was such anger by the selectmen of Francistown and Dublin, and even Bill. Our selectmen spoke up against this plan. And I'll tell you why. It's premature. There is a problem, yes, with finances, but this is not the right solution right now. They had that thing figured out from the very beginning because they wanted to close the small schools. They've been trying to do that for years. When I was on the school board, they were trying to do it. They need a plan. They need a plan with all of the schools, not just the elementary schools. And that was what the guy from Francistown, he was excellent. He blasted the school board up and down. He said, listen here, you haven't done anything except look at what seems to you to be an easy solution where there are other solutions involved. That's what you need. If we have a problem, then let's address the whole problem, not just a piece of it. The high school is half full. When I was on the school board, it had 1,200 kids in it. We expanded the dining hall. It has 650 right now. 650, that's half full. The 2 middle schools have come way down in enrollment as well. If you try to combine the 2 middle schools into one, it's a little bit too many people. I forget the numbers, but the South Meadow is the biggest of the ones. I think it holds about 450, 500, and there's a little bit more than that. So in order to go down to 1 middle school, you need to do something, either send 5th grade back to the to the towns, or put 8th grade in the high school. Either one of those would be great solutions. I actually would think they could actually put 7th and 8th grade in the high school, and they'd probably have better education for those kids. Because to tell the truth, it's a different class of teachers. I love all of our teachers. They're all very talented. The ones in the high school, though, were more expert. And so the kids who get into those classes might indeed get a little bit more advanced education in math and whatnot. At least they have more co-curricular opportunities, sports, all this kind of stuff. So there are other solutions that could be done. They didn't look at any of those. And I want to tell you, Dublin and Francistown and us, we were all so mad and pointed that out to them over and over again. They kept saying, well, we don't have the resources to do this and that. We don't know what these resources, these disparities are. They never said that. Right now, I looked at the budget, which has just come out. They're going to go up by about $2 million again. They think that they're going to save $2.5 million by closing these 4 schools. Temple's share is $150,000. That's nothing. That will be eaten up right away by the new increase in the budget. So you're not going to save anything at all. It's not going to benefit Temple. Like Rose said, it's going to affect our property values. It's going to affect the quality of life here in Temple. It's a mystery to me why they even think they can do this. Now, I want to tell you one of the things. When I was on the school board, I was actually part of a study group, and we put together a petition warrant article to combine the 2 middle schools. It failed. I said to myself, why would such a good idea like that fail? I talked to people afterwards, and I realized what happened. The teachers don't support it. They knew that if you put the 2 middle schools together, they would lose their jobs. The teachers are not going to vote for this thing, I can tell you. If you look at the number of people, the number of jobs in the 4 schools, there's probably 6 in each school. There's 6 times 4 is 24. Those jobs, they have family, they have friends, they're going to vote against it. So I myself believe that if we turn out and vote the way that we should to reject this thing, it's going to fail. And that should make them go back and rethink what they are doing. They got to do this, so that's my take on it anyway. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Allen. Yeah, I raised a daughter here for the 10 years I've been here, about 6 of those years, and I homeschooled her. And just to add on to Amy's point here, the issue is that is part of the issue, that there's a lot of families are looking at alternative ways of raising their kids, educating their kids. But there is a more serious problem. It's not just here in Temple or New Hampshire. There's a serious demographic problem across America, and as a matter of fact, across pretty much all Western culture societies. And that is the birth rate is dramatically dropped down, and there aren't going to be a lot of kids. And so Conval is avoiding that issue completely by picking on these small schools. And I don't know about the rest of you here, but I felt the whole process that we were exposed to was extraordinarily condescending and treating us like infants, especially that meeting we had at TES. And the fact that they didn't spend the resources, as Gail has said, to come up with a global plan of what is the long-term solution, not just for the small schools, but for the whole school system, because we know the enrollment's going to drop regardless of what happens. And so I think that's the issue that should be faced, is the fact that there's just a declining birth rate that's pretty dramatic. And so there just aren't going to be a lot of children. And so how do you maximize the welfare of the towns with that in mind, and also maximize the educational possibilities within the whole district? Thank you.
Vivian Wills. I did attend that meeting last week, and I agree, Peter, you've made a big point, as well as Amy, between the birth rate, which is definitely statistically going down, and also just those different ways of parents choosing to educate their kids. It's not just so rote to go the public school way. So there's that. I just wanted to recognize that I think it's a big part of this equation to understand and try to better comprehend. There's so many things that go blasting through my mind with all of this. there's been questions, there's been disagreement, and all that. The one thing that I did want to point out is that what I personally am focused on as we are coming up on needing to go to the voting booth is, what are we voting on? There's not been a plan really that has adequately been put out for step-taking process and how this is actually going to resolve anything. But the necessary thing that the school board has to get through is the Articles of Agreement. And I'm really concerned about that some of this talk, and it's necessary talk, to really hash through the questions and the concerns about the consolidation idea and everything. But I'd also like to see a message go out, very targeted, very short, because people don't read long stuff, about the Articles of Agreement. And it's going to take the 2/3 majority to get through this. One very important, powerful word in the Articles of Agreement right now is shall instead of may when it comes to these schools and this part of it. So one question that has come out is, why is the wording of the suggested change of the Articles of Agreement targeting these 4 towns to say that they may be closed, when really, if they wanted to do anything with those Articles of Agreement and choose some wording, it would be an all-around changing that word shall to may for all schools. And it wouldn't just be targeting 4 towns. But I guess the only point that I'm making right now is that I know what's important to me when I go to those polls. When I go to the voting booth, what's important to me is to really, truly understand what is going to happen. And that has everything to do with those Articles of Agreement. And the fact that in this democratic society that we have, the wonderful democracy that we have right now, I, as a homeowner, as a resident, I have that privilege of being able to vote and to know that my vote is impacting our town. That gets taken away. And then it's up to, is it 9 people or whoever's in? That's what we narrow it down to. We take that power and that right away from our towns and give it to 9 people or however many there are. But that's, I just wanted to make that point.
Well, one of the things that's really interesting about the way it's written, it does change. It mentions the 8 towns for the elementary school, and the only changes is they drop off the 4 towns. So if you glance through it, you don't see the towns mentioned. There's no like alarm. Like if someone has been uneducated and they read through this, they wouldn't really realize that it's really much of a change. Unless you realize, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, Temple's not mentioned in this list of elementary schools. And it's very unclear. It is not clear, especially in relation to the dramatic impact that this will have. It's just this little tiny, we just left off a few towns. I find that equally problematic. It's not clear. The other thing, we were adding up numbers the other day, and of course, the towns being closed, the town populations are grossly outnumbered almost just by Peterborough, but by the towns that are not being closed. And so one of the things that's super important is that everyone in the small towns, all the 4 small towns, need to talk to all their friends in the not closing towns and make it clear, you're not going to save money. We're not going to save money. You're going to destroy our towns. And I'm pretty sure none of our friends want that.
One thing that's worrisome is the somewhat flippant attitude about, well, we'll just withdraw from the cooperative. And that's not a process that is easily done. As much as we might like to do it quickly, it will take a decade in order to get out of the district should they decide to close this school, and that's the direction the town would desire to take. So saying, go ahead, shut my school, we'll just withdraw and we'll tuition in at a lower cost anyway. There you go ahead, is not necessarily an answer that you want to pursue. And it's not something that happens easily. You know, a whole committee of all the towns in the district has to be formed in order to agree or disagree. And then the town itself could file a minority report, but that has to be approved by the state. And even once that's done, then there has to be a majority vote of everyone in the district to have that withdrawal executed. And we saw Mason go through that in withdrawing from the scenic district. And it was 8 or 10 years, right? And now you've got not just 3 towns, but 8. And that will be a very difficult process to go through. So you're far better off saving the school up front than trying to go through a withdrawal process from the district in the end.
Okay. So Gail, and then I actually want to add on to what he was saying. Are you wanting to add on also?
I know you came from a different school district, but we have the wonderful example of Mason, who withdrew from New Ipswich. It took them about 3 years. Okay. Well, okay. They did it, however, and they did it for a good reason, because they wanted to be in a better school district. And so the process would be, yes, you have to get the town, first of all, to vote that they want to do it. You have to have a plan for where you're going to send your students. You know, you have to have, I think in our case, the best bet would be Milford. Milford is a very good school district. They could be persuaded to take our students. We would tuition into them. We would keep our elementary school the way Mason did, probably for grades 1 to 5. And then we would tuition the other students into another school district. It can be done. If you were desperate, it could be done. Yes, it is tough, but you can do it. Yeah, okay. It's not easy. No, I agree. Yeah. And I like your bottom suggestion though, which is, let's do what we can to save this school district the way we have it now, you know, and do some recombining. You know, we have 115 students. They're about, what do we have, 30 something, under 40 in the elementary. They're probably divided 40, 40, 40 to get to 120 students. And so that's the issue. What do we do with those students? I think the main thing is we have to get some representation on the school board. I don't know who's going to sign up to do it. I have to tell you, I killed myself for 8 years. I'm not doing that again. Okay. Well, if you want to do it, I wish you well. You may recall that I actually recommended that the town of Temple not vote for a bond issue, and the school district, it failed. The school district blamed me, and I got censured. Do you remember that? That was so much fun. And then they were really embarrassed because after that, I won the Naki Loeb First Amendment Award and made a speech to 1,000 people, which was really a lot of fun. Okay. So there's some benefits and costs here. But if you are young and talented and want to do it, it could be a very rewarding job if you want to sign up for it. But yes, let's try to defeat this thing and make them come up with a better solution. I think that's the solution.
Thank you. So I did want to just add a little bit more because I spoke with somebody from Mason who really shepherded that process through. And then there was another town, and I spoke with them probably 18 months ago. So forgive me, I'm forgetting which town it was. It was sort of northwest. but they both had very, very similar stories that the school district they were part of wasn't working. They went through the process that you described. It has to be approved by the New Hampshire State Board of Education. One thing, it seems like the New Hampshire Board of Education is more amenable to approving these things with some caveats. Often it involves the town purchasing the elementary school, including paying for maintenance that's been done over the past 10 to 20 years. So everyone I talked to said it is very expensive. It's very expensive, and both Mason and this other town, they decided to form their own SAU so that they could have the elementary school locally, and then they tuitioned out for either middle and high school, I think in both cases. And so in order to do that, they had to hire a superintendent. They were both fortunate that they were able to find a superintendent that would work about 25% for $20,000. And they both told me, you know, that happened 10 years ago, and now that person is approaching 80, or, you know, they're really wanting to retire. And so, you know, how do you find that new person to take on, you know, a big job at a very low rate that a small town like Temple could afford? So I think that's one thing that gave me pause. And the other thing is really the special education. And this is, again, just the research that I did a while ago and our committee did. But, you know, the average cost per student that doesn't necessarily need additional services is pretty low. But, you know, a student who needs additional supports, especially if there was a student that needed a full-time aide or a special transportation, you know, a wheelchair lift, the town, the SAU would be responsible for paying for that. So as part of the approval process by the Board of Education, the New Hampshire Board of Education, these towns were required to create a fund that would basically, you know, if somebody moved in and needed those extra services, that they would be able to pay for that without suddenly, you know, jacking up the tax rate in town. So it took about 10 years of building up that fund. And both towns said, if you want to do this, it's worth it for the education, but it is not a tax savings. It is very, very expensive, and it will be very expensive for a long time. So I think if it's something that Temple really wanted to pursue, I think there's absolutely an avenue. It's not a fast way, but I just want everyone to be clear that it's not a cheap option. So I think we would need to go into it kind of with that perspective. And if anyone wants to add more, but I think just to make sure everybody's kind of clear about what that process would look like.
Hi, Cindy Connolly. I just want to do a takeaway kind of in regards to like the building and maintenance and all of that, that at the meeting last week, one of the surprising things that came up was what would happen with the buildings if they do close our schools. And the towns may not have first right of refusal. So that's something we need to keep in mind. It's going to go to charter school or private schools that have the opportunity. So Temple may not even get use of that building should we vote through this change of articles of agreement. So that's just something to keep in mind, that, you know, we couldn't turn that into a senior center or a daycare center or anything of that nature. The state and those schools have the right of refusal. And even then, the district, apparently it could be for profit. They could actually rent them out, or they could sell them. So it might not even be something that it lands as a benefit to Temple. So things to keep in mind if we push that warrant article through. It's headed down a hole.
Yeah. And so I emailed Kimberly Rizzo Saunders about that because I saw your note, Vivian, and a couple of other people. And she gave a very I don't think it was purposefully evasive. I think what was said, well, hold on. So I think what was said was, there is new legislation that says in an empty building, a charter school has the right of first refusal. However, there is a lot of other legislation around anytime a building changes, a school building changes hands, that any proposal to sell the building would have a lot of legal review. So she didn't make it sound like it was Conval's intention, like, yep, we just have to let a charter school take the building if that happens. It sounded like there is a lot, but I think you make a really good point that it's not, there's been this message that the town would have the right of first refusal. We can choose what to do and it's not just up to us. Michelle, you wanted to say something?
Michelle Sully Foisey. This may not be the most popular topic, but I think it's an important one to bring up. A few of you have mentioned that the numbers are low and why are people leaving the district? I actually had a very long conversation after the meeting last week, for a couple of hours actually in the parking lot with a couple of I guess I would say gentlemen from Dublin. And the conversation started because I asked about whether I should run for selectman or run for school board, because I've been considering how to help in this situation. And the conversation turned when one of them recognized me from testifying at the State House. And it was in regards to one of the bills that is coming through that affects my family in a great way. And I asked after I said how they recognized me, if they supported me or were in opposition. And to be completely open with all of you and transparent, the bill was in regards to trans rights. So one of the people went on to say that they were in opposition of me, and both of them turned out to be in opposition. So we had a very long conversation, me trying to educate about the misinformation that is so prevalent in our world today. And it was unfortunately ended in a sad way, but I think I planted a seed. But one of the people said to me, the reason that so many people are leaving this district is because of the policies of Conval. And the fact that my daughter, and this is his words, can go into a bathroom with someone that may be transgender and they may assault her. And I think that it's important that I think as a mom that it's very important to correct this misinformation and to maybe help to educate people that are leaving the district, that the policies that they think are in place, that a student can go to a teacher and get a referral for gender hormone replacement therapy is not right, because that does not happen in our district, in any district in the state. That's not how things go. And I just think it's unfortunate that there are people that I think that person is actually accurate in thinking that people are unsafe in our district because of the policies in place. So I just wanted to put that out there. And I think that as a committee, it might be helpful if we can figure out how to educate around that topic.
Thank you.
Seems like a lot of the discussion, especially what Jim had mentioned, is that the cost would be astronomical to make this change, but it would be good to see a report of what would be an astronomical cost to the town of Temple with the degradation of our property values, the cost of traveling to Peterborough or wherever the kids would go, how that would interfere with the family life in terms of engaging their kids in the school environment. I mean, these would be awfully excessive costs, emotional and everything else, travel time, costs of, all those things. So anyway, it's not just a cost of the changing, buying out the school or whatever it is when we go to another district. There are many, many hidden costs there that we would really have to consider. And that would be interesting to see a report like that so that Temple could make an informed decision on what would be the best way to go forward. Thank you.
To Michelle's point, I think there are policies at Conval that, if nothing else, might even need to be enforced, because I think there's a lot of stuff going on up there that's really not okay. Both my kids went through Conval, started at TES with Tina's first year teaching kindergarten. I've always sold Conval as a real estate agent, or sold Temple as a real estate agent, with the idea that Temple Elementary School is like a small private school, very much a family-oriented community. The big kids help the little kids. It's a wonderful place. Then they go to the middle school. They've got 5 towns instead of 1, plus the other middle school, so they have the benefit of a larger school. Then they go to the high school, which is 9 towns. So now we have the benefits of a larger town school versus going all the way through in a very small school. But my daughter graduated in 2022. She showed me videos of girls fighting in the bathrooms, like knockdown, drag out brawls. I don't know where the teachers were. I don't know why there were 15 girls in the bathroom at the same time videotaping these fights. And I'm real fights, like fist fights, like girls getting smashed against stalled doors with their heads. It was appalling to me. I did bring it to the attention of somebody I knew that worked in the office, because my daughter asked me not to go public with it. But there's stuff going on up there that's not okay. And I know that there are people who have pulled their kids out of Conval because of things like this. Conval, the high school, has a reputation for sexual assault. There's a lot of stuff going on up there that's just not okay. I think that's something that really needs to be looked at. I think that's the reason we're losing a lot of students. Conversely, I have a friend here in town who has a daughter who has some learning, what are we calling them now? Learning challenges, differences, whatever, pretty significant. And they've done homeschooling. They've done very expensive private schools in other states. They've tried a number of different things. They got her into TES, and she is thriving. She loves it. She wants to go to school. And that's the advantage to a small school. They have the opportunity to take a child like that who's struggling at an elementary level, and maybe by getting that extra attention in a small school, they're going to age out of needing more help at a higher level, which will save the district money if they don't need additional help as they go forward. So there's a lot of things at play, and leaving the district might not be the answer, but losing our school, I think, is going to cripple us. It's going to devastate our town. It's not just people losing jobs, it's kids. How many of us have had kids at the elementary school who got a call and said, your kid is sick, I need you to come and get him? What if you work in Nashua and they're in school in Peterborough? You're now an hour away. There's so many things that are not great about it. One way to save some money right off quick would be to put all the kids on one bus route. People freak out about having their kindergartners on the bus with the high school kids. The high school kids don't really care about the little kids. They're going to sit in the back and look at their phones. The little kids are going to be annoying. Like my oldest child did that for her whole education. She rode the bus from K through 12, the same bus. That would cut our transportation budget in half. If there's that many fewer kids in the district, the buses should be able to handle it, right? Doesn't that make sense? So there's like everybody said, there's so many other solutions that could save us money without having to gut our town.
Phil Laureate. There seem to be 2 pieces to this. One is, how do we stop the closure? And then what if the closure happens? But I think now is our opportunity to stop the closure. So if we can focus on that, and there are a handful of things that, I'm thinking that we can do. And one of them is, flooding the paper, letters to the editors, and, many letters every week pointing out things like, they keep saying, oh, no, we never started this intending that, but you spent $200,000 bringing a group in from Texas to convince us that we should close the school. I've been in marketing for a long time. I program surveys, I understand surveys, and the surveys and all the stuff they did was what we call push polling, which is what the politicians do, vote for this wonderful person, or you're going to vote for that jerk. And so everything that they did was to try to convince us that this is the right thing to do. And I think we need to point that out. There's that thing that the mailer that we got the other day, where on one side it said, oh, well, we need to do this and that. And, oh, don't engage in, people say, what if, don't engage in what ifs, we need to do with now. And on the other side, it was, think about these what ifs. It's like, come on. We need to point all these things out to everybody in all of the towns and convince them that this is wrong, that that they're lying to us when they say, oh, we never thought of this. It's like, no, you've been pushing this for years. And maybe we need new people we definitely need new people on the school board, and maybe we need a new superintendent. Who's been pushing this? I don't know. Unfortunately, part of the problem is the state seems to be against public education. Public education. Send all the money to the private schools. Yeah, we can give the building to a charter school. That's great. Somebody's making money from it. So part of the problem is at the state level, and that's hard to fix. But I think we can convince a lot of people here that this has been imposed upon us, that it's been, the whole process has really been dishonest, and that we should, there are other ways to do what may need to be done, and it's not going to save any money. What is it? $2 a person in Temple per month? Did somebody say? $24 a year? Yeah.
Institutional bias against us yahoos.
Yeah. So
we have TES, vote for this, or do you want to have your taxes raised 300%?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I think we need to organize and push back in a big way. Just, keep flooding the papers, and flooding the school board, flood the superintendent's office, and see if we can convince as many of our friends in Peterborough and other towns that are not subjected to this to be a part of it. No, all they're going to do is, get 4 towns really pissed off at them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So.
Thank you.
Molly Franks. So first of all, I would echo everything that you just so eloquently said. But one of the major points is when you bring in a consultant, the point of bringing in a consultant is to push an agenda, period, end of story. And the entire point of that was to get all of the maybe less interested parties to vote for what they've been trying to do for years. Now, I am fairly new in town. I've been here 2 years. I have a child who went to a very expensive private daycare and who now, I'm gonna cry, goes to a wonderful small school and has a wonderful teacher and is one of those children who's probably gonna need special education. And the difference that I see in him compared to where he has been is a testament to what those teachers in that school do. And I can't fathom the thought of him not having that. And for us not having what we have. And for Temple, I think we need to kind of ask the question of like, who does this benefit? Which students does this benefit? Because it doesn't benefit our students.
Hi, Cindy Connolly again. Just take away from that meeting last week too, for those that may not have zoomed in or saw, number one, the Antrim rep stood up and basically said, I will not support this, the school board rep. He was very forthright with, unless my townspeople in my town is not affected, tell us that they want these schools closed, I am not voting for it. And all the other reps stood there. Which I give that man a lot of credit for standing up and doing that in front of them. But he realizes that it's a detriment to these towns. He's been in education for a long time, and he realizes that closing these schools are going to be detrimental to the towns in the long run. Secondly, it is all about reallocation. Our young kids, and I don't have a vested interest. I'm done with children in TES, but I plan on living in town for many, many more years. And they want to give to the middle school and high school. Yes, those kids deserve too, but they're going to take a lot away from our young kids as their formative years. And, you know, they want band and they want this and they want that. Let's get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. Get rid of Common Core math and get these kids learning simple, get it done. If they want band and all, you know what? My kid doesn't want to do band. It shouldn't be forced on him to have to do it. If he wants to learn a language, then let him go learn a language. But he needs to know how to be an upstanding citizen. And he needs to know how to write. He needs to know how to read. He needs to know how to do math and teach him life lessons in school. That's what they need to get back to. I'm sorry. Like, we can cut a lot of this right there. Our teachers are amazing. Can you tell us that these teachers aren't going to lose their jobs? Well, we can't guarantee anything. Of course you can't, because you know that they're on the line. And these teachers that have devoted a lot of time and energy and their lives in these districts, somebody's going to be out, and it's going to be our elementary school teachers. So we've got to get behind them and figure it out. I don't agree closure. I don't agree necessarily with going the route of pulling out of the district. But we need to know that what if we have to, you know, that this is what we can do as a town to keep kids in our town. And yeah, I agree. We need to just get a mob out there that says, vote this down 100%, this warrant article. The deliberative session is the 6th, I believe, Rose, is that what? And the interesting thing too, again, if you didn't tune into that or weren't there, they had the meeting for the 4 towns that were facing closure on the 8th, after the deliberative session, where they hope it's going to get pushed through and that they're going to agree to put this on the ballots, is when they're going to invite all the towns to come together and have a session. So somebody pointed out and said, why aren't you letting these towns in on it ahead of time? Well, we're under time constraint. Well, we want those other 4 towns to hear our concerns and know that we're validated in our concerns. So I mirror what everybody has said. Get to your friends that live in these other towns and tell them for at least now to put it on hold. Because also the superintendent stood up at that meeting and said, if you don't want us to close these schools, then you tell us not to close these schools. But we're going to either have to raise the budget or we're going to have to make some cuts. Well, their default budget's already higher. They're going to get what they want anyways. Yes, our tax rate may go up, but if we can stop the closures of these schools, vote down this warrant article or go to the deliberative session and put your voice in, because that's where it's going to be heard to get them to stop it.
Yes. One of the things that I would love to see from perhaps a Temple Elementary School teacher and town resident is a letter to the editor that dispels how poorly Temple Elementary School students are doing. Because that was one of their big pushes, was that Temple Elementary is an underperforming elementary school. And prior to this entire agenda coming out, I had spent a long period of time at the Harvest Festival talking to our wonderful principal, who also teaches math. And he told me that it has been a joy and a pleasure to watch how the teachers can see a kid who is stuck, know exactly where they're stuck, focus on them in a very short period of time, and move them along and have them catch up with the other kids in the classroom. And that's the benefit of small school. And yet Grand Prismatic put out literature stating so much research on how wonderful large classrooms are and large schools are. It's not the case, especially in our elementary schools, when kids are trying to grab concepts that are completely foreign to them. And I also want to say, all it takes with Temple Elementary School, because it's so small, is one kid not to be there when formal exams are being taken, and we get a big fat zero for one kid, and that will put us in the underperforming level that now Grand Prismatic is using to tout how poor our school is. So I don't have access to that information, but I would love to see a letter to the editor calling out Grand Prismatic, calling out the school board on Temple being an underperforming school with actual statistics. That's one. The other thing, when Jim and I moved here 26 years ago, and I say here, it was to Messinic, and Gail, I'm going to contradict you. Our children got a very good education because they had parents that were very involved in the school. The other thing that was present at that time was all three high schools, Conval, Kona, and Messinic, did not have to be all things to all people. They did not have to offer every single class to all people because we had a co-op. Messinic had their building trade, they had their automotive. We had an amazing zoology class that Conval students took by the droves. I can't begin to count how many classes we offered at Messinic that Conval didn't have to offer because we had teachers that knew how to teach it. Two of my oldest children took both anatomy and physiology at Conval because they had an amazing teacher who taught anatomy and physiology. Conant had specialized teachers as well. We had a co-op that shared the burden, so you didn't have to hire all these specialty teachers in every single classroom. And all it took was Conval to lose a superintendent, Messinic to lose a superintendent. The gentleman interviewed for Conval did not get the job for superintendent. Messinic hired him, and the first thing he did with a stroke of his pen was to dissolve the co-op between Conval and Conant and Messinic. That's when things started going down, that high school kids were not getting extra classes or additional specialty things that would have been nice to have, not necessities, but nice to have. And I don't think that's anything that Grand Prismatic or the school board has ever thought again about we don't have to be all things to all people. We have a great community of schools, and if we once again partner together, we can bring back the schools that we used to have. And to say we broke away because Mr. Corvo, who did not get hired by Peterborough, took us out and partnered us with Milford, it was the biggest mistake that was ever made. And our students did not enjoy it, nor did they then end up taking advantage of Milford.
To that note that you just said, a letter to the editor from a student, a parent rather, of a student at TES. My daughter, who's now 20, went to PES. We moved to Temple because of Amy, encouraging us to come to the Temple Elementary School. Our little guy is 6 and in 1st grade, and our next guy up is 8. So they are loving being at TES. When Maddie was at PES, one of the things that was really difficult for us was that she wasn't getting challenged in math. And I fought tooth and nail to get her challenged. And I kept getting a wall every time I tried, no matter which way I went. I finally, I think it was the last month of 4th grade, got a little small group that was a more advanced math group for the kids at PES. At TES, I asked my 8-year-old the other day, so what are you doing in math? And he's in 3rd grade. And he said, oh, I'm doing 4th grade math, Mama. And it just goes to show that the big schools, they don't always have the advantage of the challenge. And would definitely write a letter to the editor in that respect too. And I actually brought it up at the school board meeting. And it was after one of the school board members who, it was very disappointing for me to hear, because as a pediatrician, I would think that Greg Kriebel would speak to the benefits of a small school, but he very strongly emphasized that in a large school, that is where a child will learn empathy, and in a small school, it's not possible. And went on to state that in a big school, they're going to get challenged by the students that are around them. In a small school, they won't, because there's not enough of their peers to show them the more advanced, challenging work. And I actually contradicted that when I sat up and spoke. But I think that it's very important, as you said, for everyone to hear. So I will definitely do that.
I think that's exemplary of one of the most disingenuous things I saw in the Prismatic report was this: big schools are better for education. For 30 years, educators, teachers have been fighting for smaller classrooms, begging the townspeople for more tax money to get more teachers so that the classes can be smaller. And then they turn around and say, oh, your school is too small. Meeting your student where they're at in individual attention is bad for them. They're crazy. And we have to call them out on this. You're 100% right, Phil. Right. You know, that there is no lack of, I won't say there's no lack, but there is very little lack of funding at the high school and middle school level for programs. That's not the problem. It's what's being offered. And that return to basic education is something that we should be forcing, right? Not everyone needs. When we came here, we toured every school district in the area. And you might ask, why did we end up at Messinic? Well, because we went through Messinic and the
We went through Conval, Hollis,
right.
Sauhegan, and Messinic.
And
Asked for interviews with all guidance counselors and principals, and they pick a student of their choosing to give us a tour.
Yeah.
It was the student of their choosing
and
that made our decision.
of all those schools, the most personable, look you in the eye, down to earth, real person, as far as students was concerned, we met at Messinic. And I walked through there as a STEM guy, an engineer. And I looked.
K-12 curriculum in Virginia. So I'd already been on a school board committee looking at curriculum.
I looked at what's on the blackboard in the science rooms and in the math rooms and said, okay, the teachers are presenting the information. If the kids aren't taking it up, well, then there's some parental involvement problems, right? And being a parent that would be involved, we thought our kids could get a good education at Messinic, and they did. We toured Hollis, as Pam said, and which brings me back to my original point. The student that walked us through Hollis was all about the mountain biking club and the rock climbing wall and the class trip to Greece and all the extras, but they never said anything about their actual education that they were getting in the classroom. And you went around and you didn't get a feel that those kids were being asked to perform in the classroom. They were everybody was white bread, right? Everybody was above average. It was Lake Wobegon, right? And that's not a good educational environment. We need the diversity of socioeconomic strata of thought, the individual attention that comes in a small school like Temple. And we don't want to lose that. And I just look at the suggestions for expansion that came out of the Prismatic report. And I said, these are crazy. These are not things that kids need in order to be educated. I don't want to pay for those. And if you're going to take my school away, at least give me the tax money back, right? And they're not going to do that. It's insane. And we just need to, as Phil said, call them on their nonsense and continue to push back against some of these things. You know, at worst, they're lying to us flat out. At best, they're cherry picking their data. Right.
Two competing microphones. Okay. I wrote down a few notes. One of the things that, you know, we can debate whether schools should offer non-essentials or not, but one of the things that came up, and is going to be one of the reasons that people are voting for the closure, is that to make especially our high school more competitive for the kids graduating, whether they're going to a trade school or onto college. It's really important that we're preparing them and giving them a really rich, full education that prepares them for the world and prepares them to compete wherever they're going. So that's actually one of the arguments for closing the schools. I think that is probably the big one. And that, you know, towns like Peterborough are really going to support that because it's a good argument. It's not a bad argument. Losing things like world languages, it's actually not a luxury. If a student doesn't have some of these necessities, they're not going to get into the college of their choice. So there's a little bit of that. And so I think what's important is to remember that this isn't so much about how the school should be taught. That's a bigger issue, and it's not our immediate issue. Our immediate issue is to save our school. But I think the thing we need to push is that there are better solutions than this. Attacking this with a knife is a stupid solution. And it seems to be where they started. And when we talked about cherry picking data, I mean, even when they're talking in this meeting last week, they're like, well, you know, data shows, you know, if it's very small school is performing well, maybe they have 2 really great performing students, whereas a larger school will show lower numbers because it's more of an average. And it was just this like round and around, you know, picking and choosing things that supported their argument. And the other argument we need to make with the other people who are voting about this that are not going to be devastated is that this whole plan is extremely poorly developed. It's undeveloped in every way, every aspect of it. They have not checked the unintended consequences. They have not done any financial studies. They have not, it's extremely limited. And for the massive impact it will have on the lives of thousands and thousands of people for generations to come, literally, they have done not their homework at all. For educators, shame on them for not doing their homework. So we just need to be prepared with these arguments that it's about funding this differently. If we're going to say, well, we don't believe in, it's really just about funding it differently without the devastating impact. 1 second. Let me see. I have a note here. Oh yeah, I just wanted to throw in here, my kids went to the Wells School, and my son happened to be in a class that just had 3 kids in it. And that Wells School environment in those age years was very much like Temple. It was teeny. It was just teeny. It's in the lower grades. And what a fabulous education he got. What you said about that they're predisposed, that larger schools are better. That was kind of mind blowing to me, how completely biased the superintendent was that way, that, she really treated the small schools like there was some kind of some kind of abusive punishment towards children to force them to be in these lousy little tiny. And, my experience with that with my kids is that they were exposed to so much, the older kids help the little kids. If we have a bus that has high school kids and little kids, you better believe friendships or protection is going to form between older kids and little kids. It just happens. And that's been my real experience. And another thing I want to make sure we leave this with is people who are interested is talking about what our next steps are. I have a link to the actual report from Prismatic. I'll post that on the Temple page. I think most people here have access to the Temple page. If you don't, ask a friend to get it to you, because it's a little buried in the Conval website. I'll post that. And then, there's a couple little groups forming that are, let's have some coordinated signage. I'm a marketing person. I would like us to command the graphic of a heart and say, save our elementary schools, because it's the heart of these towns and we don't want to, destroy the heart of the towns. There's other ways we can do this. And we have a little website started, support.convalelementary.com.org. I can't remember. But anyway, so there's some stuff forming. Keep your ears out, look for those things, share them on the Temple page so we can, coordinate our efforts. I like one person was talking about having like a protest on 101 in Peterborough where we have signs and, and just a little visibility protest kind of thing. So.
We could have a mailing.
It's extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, the CAC committee, we've got, for instance, we have ARPA funds. And the CAC committee can ask for ARPA funds.
We did that in 2016.
Yeah. Yeah, we did.
This is such
To
a-
Temple.
This is such a critical issue.
Yeah.
And they have
Mhm.
$20,000.
Yeah.
Couple $1,000 for mailing, I think would be, articulated clearly. Would be a great benefit, but, you're not counting on somebody, haphazardly coming across a sign somewhere, protest,
Mhm.
pretending up in the post.
Yeah. And I think what we did last time was pretty effective.
We did them on color.
Yeah.
We sent them out.
Yeah, they were, I wordsmith them, the stuff we get from Conval or from anything, it's like, it's a wall of words. What we did, yeah, to save our schools.
So I think before we get into tactics, which I think we should get into, but not right here, because it's a little bit after 8. Rose, do I hear that you're willing to maybe, if people are interested in marketing or getting the word out, that they could talk to you and you can, okay. And I will say that the CAC does have a little bit of budget for a mailer. I think the budget would be like a mailer to Temple, but I'm hearing that maybe we should do a broader mailer. So I think the CAC, we can be in touch about helping to apply for ARPA funds or using some of our budget or something like that. So if there are ways that we can support.
If we coordinate whatever, if we want to do a mailing, like if all 4 towns put together, could we do a mailing to the district?
Mhm.
Because yes, we need to inform our own towns. That's easier, but informing Peterborough is super important.
Yep. Okay, so one thing that I hear is talk to Rose if you want to help be involved in some of that. If you want to write a letter to the editor, if you are, if you want to write a letter but maybe don't know what to say, I think Rose is really good at messaging, so she can. I'm just volunteering Rose. I do not have Rose's permission to do that. So I want to see, it is about 8:10. If you need to go, feel free. We know that you support the school. Your leaving does not say anything about that. But if you, I wanted to say one thing kind of as a parent, but I also want to see, does anyone have something burning that you are wanting to say in the group before we sort of wrap up and move on to something next? Okay, so I see Cindy and Gretchen. Anyone else? I'm just trying to take notes to make sure. So I guess I'm going to take my facilitator hat off. I am a parent at TES. I have a 4th grader and a kindergartner. And I moved to this area actually to be the admissions director for a private school. So our intention was not necessarily to send our kids to TES. And when my son was in, they had a multi-year kindergarten and it was not a good fit. It's a great school, not a good fit. And so we kind of made a last minute decision to have him enroll in TES when he was in kindergarten. And it turned out to be a wonderful fit, much to my surprise. I had even gone to, it was the Waldorf school, and I even got a Waldorf teaching certificate. I was like really all into this. So I think TES has been wonderful for my kids. And in part of all of this conversation, I keep hearing about all of this lack of resources in the middle school and high school. And my son is in 4th grade. He's about to go into middle school. I'm like, what is he about to walk into? Like, is this the lion's den? I mean, what's going on? So I went on the SMS website, and I can find a lot of information about what they eat for lunch. And I can find a lot of information about the behavioral intervention program. And that's about it. I can't find like, what are they doing for math or English, or are there world languages, or aren't there? Because I've heard a lot of different things. I can't even find the principal's email address to ask these questions. So in terms of, I think one of the things that I see in terms of, just people I know in town, there are a lot of great educational options in this area. There's wonderful homeschool groups. There's a lot of great private schools, charter schools, and Conval, like I see because I'm in the school and my kids, and I hear what's going on. But before that, I had no idea. And there's not really a great way to find out what's going on. I mean, I'm about to do what you did and call SMS and say, I need to come, I need to see. Like, if my son's going to go to 5th grade there, I need to know what's going on. But it's not easy to get that type of information. So to say, oh, there's no resources there, it's like, what is lacking? So anyways, that's my parent spiel that, so I see Gretchen and Sydney. I'm going to let Gretchen talk first because she has it, and then I'll give it to you.
So excited to see everyone here, and thank you for everybody's comments. I have 2 little ones at TES. I have a kindergartner and a 3rd grader. And I just wanted to throw out a couple random things for talking points for people. I've heard a lot of people complaining about, if the school's closed, the bus routes are going to be crazy long. One, I'm super excited about combined busing and changing the start time for middle school and high school. Super important for these big kids to be able to sleep in. That bus goes past my house at 5:30, people. They're like 6:30. It's like super early. So I'm excited about bus routes being combined, but the buses are already long. My kids ride 45 minutes both ways on the bus in Temple. So it's a false thing to say that the bus rides are going to be over 40 minutes. They're already 40 minutes. Are they going to be an hour? Maybe. I'm still going to send my kids on the bus if it happens, but probably I would lay off on the 45 minutes on the bus ride. It's already today is 45 minutes for kids in Temple. There's a few kids that have really short rides, but not all of them. The other thing, charter schools, that also threw me for a loop when they said something about first right of refusal and the charter schools having a choice. I wanted you all to know, if you weren't aware, that Wellhart just got approval for a new charter school for Hillsborough County. They are planning on opening a micro school in fall of 24. They've been aggressively advertising. Probably you've seen it on a lot of the Temple pages and the other group pages. It's a Reggio nature inspired school, and I'm friends with the founder. She's planning on being located in Milford. If there was a school available, she might jump ship. I don't know, but just something to keep in your thoughts. So there is this charter school that's hopefully trying to open in the fall of 25 that is planning on being in Milford, which isn't that far away. So something to keep in mind. And I had one more thing. I'm super excited about your hearts, Rose. I like your heart idea. And I think that's it.
I just wanted to comment again, and I don't know if Michelle, I don't know who else was in the parking lot, but just something to keep in mind. Dublin apparently also is working on a warrant article for closure, and kind of stop making it like a stalling tactic. So we're going to just want to be mindful of what comes out to make sure that we're voting the right warrants and being super cautious of that wording, because I don't know exactly what it's going to say, but they are preparing their own warrant article, much as we did in 2016 to get that verbiage changed because they wanted to shut them down then, and we got it that they had to maintain the schools in the 8 districts or 8 towns. my personal note on that is I'm very disappointed to see that the one that really helped push us and get us there is completely 180 changed his opinion on that. The school board rep completely changed his mind and now is against all the schools being open. But just keep that in mind that Dublin is working on something, and so we could have warrant articles that are going to potentially help each other, but we want to just watch that wording that's coming through. So.
As far as I've heard, the warrant article from Dublin is to secede from the district. And I don't know what the exact wording will be, but I do know that they are looking to go out of the district and to leave. So.
All right, this is last call. Yes. Wait, you have to use the microphone, please.
I don't have anything to say, but I'm just wondering if the teacher that's in the room here could give us a brief description of what it's been like to teach, having less kids there, and whether you find, with your experience, whether the children have been less receptive or less amenable to having less kids, whether you find the education is not as effective. I don't mean to put you on the spot if you don't want to speak, but please say no. But it's all of us here aren't teachers, and none of us have that experience of actually what it's like in the school. So anyway,
So I'm going to ask, are you comfortable answering that in this forum? Okay. So I think that would be a great question. I know there's certain Conval employees have certain ramifications about what they could. Yeah. So I think that would be a great question for afterward.
Phil Laureate again. I was actually a music education major, and part of the ed psych stuff was about school size and class size, and how, yeah, small classes are generally really, really good, especially for little kids. When you get older, there's an interaction that you can have with a slightly larger school size or class size. But certainly at the elementary level, the amount of attention that a few kids can get is really the best way to go. So it changes as depending on the age. Like you go to, in college, the classes in, with 200 kids in there. That's right. I did.
Thank you. So I think the other thing that I've heard kind of threads of through this conversation is that consolidation of resources, like you were talking about with Conant, Conval, and Messinic, is a good thing. It's part of what makes rural schools really be able to work. And it seems that, every time Conval talks about consolidation, it's in one particular way with consolidating elementary schools. So I wonder if there is a group that wants to maybe start thinking more creatively about what consolidation could look like in a different way. And I'm not talking about buildings. I'm just talking about like how to work together. I think I would be interested in that conversation. So maybe you can talk to me, and I don't know where it will go, but I like to think creatively about resources. So, yes, sharing resources. So with that, again, if you want to talk about marketing or writing letters, talk to Rose. And then if you want to talk about resource sharing, you can talk to me. And if the Community Advisory Committee, if you have other ways that you think we can support our town, education in our town, you can talk to me or talk to Lillian. We're the co-chairs. And that is what our committee does. So thank you again for being here, and thanks for staying out on not such a cold night.